folks. This is Informed Dissent, and this is your news of the week for the week of January 31st, 2026. A lot of news out of Nebraska this week. So Nebraska lawmakers hold hearings on three bills addressing sex-based definitions, gender medicine, and medical malpractice accountability. The LGB Courage Coalition testifies in support of all three Nebraska bills, centering the impacts on gay and lesbian youth. In New York, the Attorney General's Office of New York fires consumer fraud attorney and friend of the pod, Glenna Goldis, after internal dissent over pediatric gender medicine scrutiny. Fire files federal lawsuit against Illinois on behalf of Democrats for Informed Approach to Gender. Wrongful death lawsuit in Tennessee renews scrutiny of adult gender medicine practices involving psychiatrically vulnerable patients. And the U.S. Department of Education finds that San Jose State University did violate Title IX by allowing a male athlete to compete in women's volleyball. No kidding. This week's deep dive is a conversation with me, Jamie, and Cori about our recent travels across the country and what we're seeing on the ground. And joining us this week on our second segment is Dr. Karla Solheim, a board-certified OBGYN practicing in Northeast Iowa. She writes the OBGYN Power Project, a Substack focused on supporting physicians, particularly those practicing in rural settings. One of her essays on gender medicine went viral in March and helped bring her work to a national audience. So stay tuned for that. On to the show.
Hello. Welcome to Informed Dissent. I missed you all so much. We could not figure out recording last week, and I just realized, like, Cori, I missed you. I missed talking. This is becoming like my weekly reflection session. So
Yeah, I missed you both also, and you're just globetrotters. It's hard to keep up with you.
No, it's so much fun.
that was the problem. That's why we couldn't record. We kept going to hotels where it seemed like they would have hard wiring, so we can't upload if we don't have internet that we could hardwire in.
Okay, why not?
Well, because the files are so big that I usually have to use an Ethernet cord and stick it into the router, but we couldn't get it to work at the hotel that we were at. So, and trying to upload it through Wi-Fi, we did do that once, and we were up until 3:30 in the morning getting it to upload because the Wi-Fi just wasn't. Yeah.
We don't want people to feel bad about our lives.
Yeah. But post-production is a bitch.
We were awake until 3 a.m. one day because you also have to keep refreshing to make sure it doesn't time out when you're uploading. And
Yeah.
I'm gonna.
This has nothing to do with anything that our audience cares about, but I'm gonna ask anyway.
Okay.
Have you tried compressing the video before uploading it? Or do you do, I guess maybe you do compress it.
I don't know what that means.
I don't know what that means either.
I think though that Zoom compresses it. I'm not sure, but thank you for that tip. I will look into that thing that I don't understand and learn more again, because I now have a PhD in gender shit and audio visual that I'd never wanted, and here we are. And should we tell everybody where we were at? What we were doing? Yeah. We were literally all over the continental USA. We went to Boston last week.
No, first we drove hours to Missouri.
Right.
That capital.
Right. We testified in the Missouri Capitol to get rid of their sunset and close a loophole.
You were so good at it. And then
did you testify?
I did testify. Yes,
okay,
I did.
Yes, that was to remove the sunset on both the sports and the pediatric ban on puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones.
Meaning, for those who don't know what a sunset is that we were testifying in order to remove that sunset to make those bans a permanent law. Otherwise, with the sunset, they would expire next year in 2027. We did not want that to happen, so we gave some passionate testimony to show our support for making this a permanent ban. And then we flew to Boston to help out a school board meeting that was trying to enact a truly asinine bullying policy.
Mm.
Um, they enacted it anyway.
Yes. And they had suspended a student who had misgendered a classmate for misgendering. An
Oh no.
illegal suspension, but yes.
Right. So and I mean, they kept saying at this school board meeting, no one has been suspended for misgendering. And here this kid now has on his permanent record, he's about to graduate. So these transcripts go to college. On his transcript, it says hate speech.
Yep.
And he was, in fact, suspended for calling a girl a girl.
A girl.
Like, just an aside, they were in a group project.
Oh, no, no,
Right.
no, no.
This wasn't like a malicious thing. They were in a group project and somebody asked
Yeah.
about a certain component and he said very casually, "Oh, that's her job." And now he has a hate speech mark on his permanent record. So we're
Yeah.
going to give our point of view to this Maine school board. A lot of the parents there were super happy to have us and have our support. I think we kind of gave people some hope and honestly some permission to start speaking out about some of these policies that are being enacted in these schools. And then
What did
after
the
that,
girl say? Like, was she mad? Did she complain, or was she like, "Oh my God, I wasn't that offended. Let this kid go"? Like, what was her
oh,
position?
I'm not sure about that. I mean, she must have made some kind of complaint for him to get in trouble for it. Um, but yeah, it's a shame because these kids are having their life affected and, you know,
Yeah.
over pronouns. And then after that, we got up very, very early to fly to, where did we go? Oh, Washington State. Flew into Seattle. Charming, charming city. Um,
I think that's Baltimore.
yeah. What? No. But Seattle's crazy. And we went to a conference where we were asked to speak about
I killed Jamie.
You did.
some of some of the issues around organizing in this space and who's standing up for women and kind of, why this is a gay rights issue to fight against pediatric gender medicine. Jamie, you have your hand up. Would you like to say something?
But I got to give a keynote.
Oh, yeah, that's right. She gave the keynote. It was great.
Oh, what was the event that you gave the keynote?
The Roanoke Conference in Washington State.
Okay.
It was pretty cool. And then
That is good.
I gave the keynote Friday night, and then the protesters showed up Saturday to protest me, the old transphobe, and then they're like, "She already spoke. You missed it by a day." So
Yeah. It was actually a really nice convention. It's apparently the largest convention on the West Coast that is not paid for by either political party. So it's
Okay.
yeah, it's a very grassroots.
but it leans conservative.
It does lean conservative, but these people were very open. There was a few Diag Democrats there who were also welcomed with open arms.
Mm.
So yeah, it was a nice time. The town we were warned before we go. It was in Ocean Shores, Washington. We were warned before we go, be prepared for terrible weather and fog. And we get there and it was sunshine and bluebirds the whole fucking time. We're walking around on the beach. And then Jamie, do you have the review of the town? Because that was the most hilarious thing I've ever read in my life.
I don't know if I do. But apparently Washington State it's very expensive to live there. Like the real estate is very expensive. And so I looked up this town and it was like, are you wondering why this town is so much cheaper than the rest of the state?
Because
Well,
it was. I was like, oh my God, these tiny little homes, we could easily buy property here. Why has no one found this gem yet? And then she reads this review
and it was
that,
basically like dark depression. It rains. It's never happy. Everyone here goes to cry. It's like, oh,
it's
okay.
the capital of seasonal depressive
It is for the whole
disorder.
state.
Yeah.
It's like there was 2 days of sunshine when we were there.
Yeah, it was great. It was
You
lovely.
must have brought it.
Yeah, of
Did,
course.
did did you encounter our friend Brian Haywood?
Oh,
Oh, we
yes.
did. Yeah, we did.
Yes.
Yeah.
What's going on with him? I ask,
He was jet
knowing the
setting to
answer.
Japan
Oh,
right
that's
after
not
the
what I meant.
conference.
Oh, meaning how are the petitions going? How did it go?
Yeah. Did you not hear the news about that?
Oh,
We
they
did. Would you like to update everybody?
yes, go ahead. Give us the numbers.
Say something smart, Cori.
Well, it's not so much about the numbers. It's that after a certain point, the after you turn in your all of your signatures and if you hit your certain threshold, the state of Washington, their legislature is supposed to pick up those issues and debate them.
Yep.
Right, and
And
the Democratic Assembly has refused to have a hearing on them.
that's correct.
Yeah.
So even though these two issues, one of them is preventing boys from playing girls' sports, the other one is allowing parents to have transparency into the uh, records of their children's educational records, and the Democrats in Washington are just like, we don't want to do any public hearings on these. So this is really interesting because there's broadly public support. This is not once you get down to the street level, this is not as partisan as it looks in the media. A lot of
No, not at all.
Democrats, yeah,
Not at all. I mean, he actually said statistically, like they blew the numbers out of the water for these ballot initiatives,
yeah,
and he said it was 50-50 Democrat and Republican people who signed.
right. So
So,
it's not the moderates that make it into most political positions. There's a few, but by and large, it's the people who are more partisan, and they are broadly blocking many of their own same party constituents who want these issues to appear on the state ballot. So,
well, so they did look into this, and they found that the minority party can hold a hearing. So the Republican Party is going to hold a hearing on these ballot initiatives. So there will
yeah,
will be a hearing. But it's very scary when you realize you can go jump through all the hoops as a citizen to get your voices heard, and they can shut you down anyway. That's
yeah.
scary,
So
especially when we're
after
talking about the topics that we're talking about.
when you were done in Washington, you came right back home.
We came back home, stayed here for about 15 seconds, and then Jamie flew to Nebraska
Oh,
to close their loophole
Well, we hope.
in their gender care ban. Nebraska was they were one of the first states early on, right, to ban it, and so there wasn't a lot. There's at that time there wasn't a lot of new evidence. There wasn't the CAS report. There wasn't the HHS report. Um, so I think the Republicans who passed it were still under the impression that, well, there must be some kids. So they had a loophole that said extreme circumstances.
Yeah.
Now,
hmm.
that's very vague. What does that mean to us? We all know
Yeah,
what that means. That means trans the gay
gay.
kids. Yeah, trans the gay kids. Um, so we had our little team go up there and testify, and hopefully we get this loophole banned in Nebraska because of their loophole, the surrounding states that have had full bans are now like people are crossing state lines to get through this loophole in Nebraska. So
Of course,
yeah, which we knew would happen. So
we
we
knew.
brought that up, brought that to their attention. So we're hoping to see these bills pass and have a complete ban in Nebraska. And yeah, And then we're on to the blue states, I guess.
I gotta say, I have not testified out of state this year, but I did testify on
Yeah.
Indiana Senate Bill 182 last week on defining sex in law. And it also prohibits modifying birth certificates, which, by the way, I don't think is such a big deal. My birth certificate still says male. It's always said male. I've never changed it, and it's never caused any problems. Um, I will say that my Kroger discount card says female on it, and that's been highly protective when I go and buy incense and candles at the grocery store. Um, and
So
I
how
think
do you feel like
Kroger.
that went? The testimony?
I thought you were going to ask about the candles.
No, I'm just,
Um, one of the things that I guess I'm going to grouse about a little bit is that I had some heads up that it was likely that there was going to be a hearing on this bill. So I reached out to some of my friends that have feminist networks, and all of the proponent testimony came from right aligned sources and me. And the feminists did not show up for this, and they had notice. So I'm a little perturbed.
Um, I think it's interesting because in Nebraska, um, I'm not, whew, if we would not have shown up, it would have been the Catholic, there would have been that
Yeah,
the same thing. I,
I I know Diag shows up to some of these, especially in some of the crazier places like Colorado and California, and I don't know where else. Lots of other crazy places, but there's not a lack of organizing on these issues because we're hearing about them, we're talking about them, and we show up to them. So I think that there's maybe just I think it bears asking why we see this. It's not universal, right?
no,
I honestly just think it's about funding. Like, can you physically move the bodies to get people there?
Well,
I
if
don't
they're
know that it's
already in the
about,
city, it's
oh, you mean local feminist orgs?
yeah. I mean, even though this is Indiana, there's at least one feminist in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
okay. I,
Probably in Carmel.
It's funny though, actually, it's fun. This actually came up during the Roanoke conference where they were like saying, like, I know the right has this view of feminism, like, oh, the feminists have all betrayed women. They're all trying to push men in women's sports. And I brought up the fact that, the radical feminists departed from the liberal feminists way back in the 70s, and it was over
Mm.
porn. And they were the first ones to really speak coherently about the dangers of especially for women and children, of this transgender. Um, it was the late 60s, early 70s. Janice Raymond wrote The Transsexual Empire. So they've been on this topic for a while, and they actually do align quite closely with a lot of conservative viewpoints. So surrogacy, for example, IVF, porn, sex trafficking. They're women's issues that the radical feminists of the left, um, not to be confused with the liberal feminists, they really align with the things that conservatives are concerned about, with the exception of abortion. So when I started talking about this, the woman on the panel with us, um, she was shocked. She had no idea that there was a wing of feminism that was so closely aligned to her values, in many ways except one. And I think like that's still the broad consensus, is that feminism is this weird liberal feminist kind of pseudo not really feminism where they're advocating for men and women's sports and spaces, and sex positive and porn positive, all that stuff. I think larger society doesn't even know that there are women who call themselves feminists who really are looking critically to protect women and girls.
Okay.
So I just thought that that
Yeah.
was an interesting aside. Like she was shocked. She had no idea. Everyone in the audience was like, "Really? There are feminists who are saying this is wrong?" So
Okay, but I need to address what Cori was getting at for a little bit. Cori, you said there's organization, like we're organized or
Hmm.
okay. I still think we are the total and complete underdog here in terms of organization, money. Uh,
Sure.
Okay, so for example, in Missouri, Lauren and I went to testify in Missouri with one other org member, all from the state of Missouri.
Hmm.
But the opposition, there is a state level LGBTQIA org that has 8 employees that are paid just in this state to ensure that they're following the bills, tracking the bills, organizing testifiers. They will bus people in. They bought pizza for the overflow room and made sure everybody had snacks and water and they had they probably had coloring pages and fidget devices in there for people to be emotionally supported while they wait.
but they've also donated they to a lot of those committee
Yeah.
members' political careers. So one in particular, the largest donation she received was from this LGBT organization,
A
who
woman,
then
Hmm.
testified in front of her, which take
right?
from that
But
what you want. But
if
these are
every
groups with, yeah.
if every single state has a small organization that probably has 10 times the budget to get people out to testify, I
Yep.
mean, I understand the you were able to get there and I get that frustration like why isn't anybody else coming with me? But it takes so much work to know what the bills are. When are they going to be heard? Sometimes they cancel and reschedule the hearings
Correct.
the day of. They move
Yes.
the rooms. You need an insider. You need somebody who knows the bill. You need like there's so many elements that need to get put together, and that's really expensive work. Like there are paid professional lobbyists on other topics. We don't have that.
Yeah, there's also a safety concern too. Like we had the opportunity to reach out beforehand and say, hey, listen, we need to make sure that we get walked to our car if we're leaving after dark. We need to make sure that there's security in the hallways because the last time Jamie was there, she was being harassed in the hallways. Like, if you are just a lone woman with no connections to show up like that in a situation where you could be assaulted, that's a tough
Yeah.
sell. It's a
It's
tough sell.
I'm not trying to make a special exception or anything, but it's a woman or man. Because I've been pushed around. I've had people put their hands on me in
Yeah,
these
no, exactly.
situations.
No, I understand, but you know, anyway, there's still a
Yeah.
lot more organization and funding and cooperation that needs to be hammered out in this movement as a whole. Like we're still feeling out how to support people that we sometimes really disagree with on almost every other issue except this one. So there's a lot to maneuver in that. But I'm glad you were there to speak up. How
Yep.
do
The
you?
bill passed out of committee. That's good.
That's amazing.
There's something that I wish they hadn't done, which is they put in a bathroom provision for K through 12 and colleges that, you know, I don't have strong feelings about that necessarily from a policy view, but the more things that you put into a bill, the harder it is to get it passed, the more
Hmm.
partisan it becomes. So if I were able to get some Democrat support on just the prison part, they're not going to join on the bathroom part, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was another thing I mentioned in Roanoke. Like if you are going to work and try to have a large coalition of people, your focus has to be narrow because you may disagree on almost everything else. So keeping things as narrow as possible and let people vote on these issues as they come, I think would be a better political strategy. So
Can we talk about some of the other news of the week that happened?
sure.
Well, our friend of the pod, Glenna, got herself fired.
Mm,
Oh yeah.
yeah. Well, I don't know if she was trying to get fired, but good for her, she wouldn't let them silence her.
Yeah. And then Diag in the state of Illinois is suing over the word Democrat. I saw that one. Was there any other?
Are they suing or being sued?
No, they are suing the state of Illinois because Illinois, I think, passed something that said
In
you
the
can't.
70s, they passed something that said you can't use the word Democrat unless you get permission from the party.
No, no, they said you can't use the word Democrat or Republican unless you have the blessing of the party, so the bureaucratic we're talking about
Yeah.
party. So yeah, Diag is now suing so that they can use the word Democrat because they are all Democrats, but they don't obviously align with the gender madness of the Democratic Party. So,
Do they call themselves Diag or do they call themselves Democrats Informed? Is it like GLAD where it doesn't stand for anything?
no,
No,
it does stand for something. It's Democrats for an informed approach to gender.
That's it. That's it.
But yeah,
but insider baseball is we just call them Diag.
yeah, we call them Diag.
They call themselves Diag.
I think so, yes.
They should adopt the GLAD and the what are some of the other groups that used to stand for gay and lesbian and they don't stand for anything now?
All of
Flag,
them.
All
P
of them.
flag, P flag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they should just follow the trend. And Diag doesn't stand for Democrats. They just happen to all be Democrats.
They used to stand for it, and now in Illinois they don't anymore.
Yeah. Well, it's like single party government in Illinois.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Glenna, man, that's crazy. She had a whole piece in the
Free
uh
press.
yeah, the Free Press, Barry Weiss's former stomping grounds. I guess Barry Weiss is on to bigger and better things.
She's still, well,
I know. I'm just commenting.
and then she was on Megyn Kelly yesterday too.
She was on Megyn Kelly. She had a
Man.
really good thread about because the headlines keep saying lesbian lawyer, blah blah blah, and she had a really good comment about how like because people were saying, do you have to talk about being a lesbian? Is that necessary? And she was like, yeah, essentially, I'm paraphrasing what she said, but she was like, yes, it is important. It is important that people know that gays and lesbians see the harm of this trans movement. It is at its core homophobic, and that we are being silenced in our objections to being lumped in with this craziness that is harming us. That was a real loose paraphrase. She said it much better than that.
I just pulled it
Yeah.
up. Yeah. I liked this part. Does it really matter that you're gay? How do you feel about being reduced to your sexual orientation? It matters, and I feel okay.
Yeah.
Who
Yeah.
asked her that?
Well, I think it's I'll just read the whole tweet. Headlines keep calling me lesbian lawyer. I get questions about it. Does it really matter that you're gay? And how do you feel about being reduced to your sexual orientation? It matters, and I feel okay. Here's why. The New York Attorney General, I don't know how, is it Letitia
Yeah.
James, fired a
Yeah.
lesbian, me, for challenging gender medicine. This spectacle exposes two charades, LGBTQ and DEI. Sorry. If LGBTQ activism actually served gay people's interests, you wouldn't see us turning our lives upside down to denounce it. Oh, then she tagged us at LGB Courage. The truth is, LGBTQ activism serves gender doctors and straight people with unconventional hairstyles and hurts gay kids. James supports DEI, but if she truly valued diverse perspectives informed by lived experience, she'd have taken my concerns for gay youth seriously. Can you name any prominent DEI supporter who treats gender critical gays with respect? Wearing the label lesbian lawyer feels goofy, but it's worth it to grab attention for a story about DEI and LGBTQ hypocrisy.
Yeah, she knows the message.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I replied, and I also liked Jennifer's reply. I said, I say I am a homosexual multiple times a day now. I have to. We must. And then Jennifer said, we will all address you as such. So we should all just call Glenna now lesbian lawyer.
It sounds like a superhero identity.
Lesbian lawyer.
Yeah, it is. What are you talking about?
Yeah. She goes to the crime scenes to save them, driving an invisible Subaru.
In all seriousness though, like everybody cannot keep becoming unemployed.
Yeah.
In this movement. Unless
yeah, Colin is suing. Colin Wright's suing. Did you see that?
Yes. But one of the things I said to Glenna was, we will make sure you don't starve. But how many people have to get fired?
Right, because Glenna had the advantage of having a platform already where she was already speaking out about this. So yeah, I mean, is Joe Schmo down the street or Joanne Schmo down the street who speaks out about this at their local, whatever business they're in, if they're a teacher or a social worker, are they going to get interviewed by Megyn Kelly or us or anyone or the Free Press going to? No, they're not, and they know it.
Yeah.
And they're going to just lose their job. And so I mean, the risk is
appreciate
real.
her. It's good that she's like a figurehead for this. I appreciate she's well spoken, she's analytical, she dresses nicely, maybe because she's a lawyer. And because of all of those factors, I have decided not to publish my 2,000 word essay taking her down and cutting her down to size.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cori. That's big of you. For the movement.
For the movement.
Right. Right. Who would do such a thing?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
Oh Lord.
This is a subtext, right?
Also, I do think some lesbians dress well. It's not just because she's a lawyer that she dresses well. Oh God. Okay. So, Cori, we interviewed Karla today.
For listeners, that's coming up next.
Yeah, and she's also a Democrat.
OBGYN. Oh, she's also lesbian.
She's also lesbian.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. But here's the thing that I want to talk to you about maybe a little bit before we wrap up, before we go into her piece, which is I still struggle with how we welcome newcomers who don't know all of the hip jive, all the they don't follow all the rules, and they might still say trans man instead of trans identified woman.
Right. It's really important that we use all of the same language. Otherwise, it becomes confusing about which our tribal identities are. So people need to start conforming with our viewpoints as quickly as possible so we know that we can trust them.
Right. Ironically, it's the same thing we're fighting against, but that seems to be lost on a number of people who require this purity test before you even get to speak on this topic now. And we talked to her a little bit about that.
It's challenging though, because you also, I, the other element to this is that when you get a newcomer come in, I think it's not just, oh, do you know the tribal language? I don't care as much about that. I think I care more, do you understand the issue? And are you like, I just feel like we have to come to this position where we welcome you. Come on over. You've learned this one piece. Come on over.
Not
We
even do
welcome
you understand the issue? Do you understand that there is an issue?
No, also,
Because then you can build from that.
no, but also, do you understand that just because you just peaked on it doesn't mean that you discovered something that, like, there are experts over here. If you're coming in, like, I feel like there needs to be some element of we welcome you, we want you here. At the same time, check your ego, your hubris, learn,
Oh,
open to learn.
no, nobody does that.
Well, I don't think I thought Karla. I don't think she came in saying I know it all, and she's clearly, because of her last article that she writes about WPATH. She's clearly been on a learning curve. She's clearly done a lot of work to educate herself as to what is actually happening.
Okay, but what do we do? This concept of a learning curve, like, do we need to like make like you've just peaked. You went through all these things to
Yeah.
get here. Now you're here.
No, I don't think that's possible because people's eyes open to this issue in just a variety of different ways for a variety of different reasons. Like my reasoning for being in this fight is vastly different from the Christian conservative who is appalled at these medical interventions. It's slightly different than the feminist take. I mean, so many people come into this for so many different reasons. Some people get in because they're like, why are there boys and girls sports? And some people are like, this is really homophobic. Or other women are like, why are there men in my locker room? And like, there's
Or
so
this
many.
this is a Marxist plot,
Right. Or this is a
which it
Marxist.
is.
Exactly. So people get into it from different angles. And so I don't know that, because what resonates with me was not going to be what resonates with somebody else. So it is
it's
difficult.
fine.
It's
It's
difficult.
fine.
People
The
are
one thing we can't have people who show up and say, I'm with you. And that's and also, can't we just be nicer to trans people? Like we can't have people that show up and start immediately trying to tone police us.
Yeah.
Wait, walk me through that. We
Yeah,
can't.
yeah. I didn't say it very well, so I appreciate you asking because I'm going to try to do a better job the second time. There are people who either deliberately or carelessly disrupt movements because they misunderstand what the purpose of the movement is. The purpose of our movement is to reduce or eliminate harm to individuals, for our part, largely gay and lesbian kids, as well as other kids, harm to women and girls. And like, that's our main purpose. We're not out to try to make life worse for anybody, although they might disagree from their perspective because our policies might feel like they're making their lives worse, but that's not our goal or our perspective. So we can't have people coming to the movement. I'll give a better example. If somebody showed up and said, man, I'm glad you guys exist because I also hate trans people, we would say, get out of here.
Yeah,
That's
you're
not,
not. Yeah,
that's
I
not
don't
what
know
we're
if
here
I'm
for.
the first thing I'm not gonna say is get the hell out of here, but the first thing I'm gonna say is, whoa, 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 whoa. We don't hate trans people.
Yeah, and then we'll say, yeah, no, if if your motivation, if your belief is that our motivation that we're doing this is because we're motivated by hatred of trans people, those people cannot be delegated any of our authority or reputation to pursue anything. They can't be part of what we're doing.
Okay, but who, this is where this is what I find challenging because a movement, when you think about a movement, like there's the people within it that I'm close to that they
Yeah.
might, that,
Yeah.
that
But it means if there's a LGB courage event and somebody who's very openly saying the whole reason that I support these laws is because I hate trans people, then we say, nope, that's not what this is for, and you're not welcome.
but what if
And
we have to,
yeah,
what if we as a movement have to do these things with people that say that, but we didn't invite them, but we have to be at the same thing.
we don't have to be at the same thing. So if it's giving testimony, that's a public forum. That's not something where we've been invited to be participants. And if there's some sort of event, let's say there's some third party group where it says, "Hey, let's invite everybody who supports this one piece of legislation, regardless of what any of their reasons are." We learn that half the people that are showing up are because they're motivated by animus, hatred. We don't have to show up to that. If we show up and we find out after we get there that there are people like that, we can get into arguments with them and then leave and then not come back again. But we cannot join our arms with people and say this person who's motivated by hatred and this person who's motivated by protecting the vulnerable are the same movement. We can't. That's my perspective. I seem to have struck a nerve, though.
Well, first of all, we're not talking about Karla right now. So I just want to make it very clear. We're not like, oh, Karla hates trans people. And we don't know. Totally different. This is way bigger. But some people I do think come into this movement and what if they come into the movement with that animus and they just don't know? What if they think that all trans identified people are doing it for reasons like what if they just don't understand? Do we just write them off?
I don't think that's what I'm saying. I think you're raising something that's a slightly different dimension. I don't think that you have to have perfect knowledge about this issue on all of its fronts to participate. But when we look at people's motivations, if they don't understand our motivation, which again, repeating it, it's to protect vulnerable people. If they don't understand and respect that motivation, then they need to understand it. And if they don't agree with it, they can't be allies. Because what they're saying is fundamentally the thing that you're pursuing is not something I agree with. And even if you agree on some of the same facts that I do, right? Like if you had a vegetarian meetup group, you wouldn't let Hitler go. You don't have to let everybody. Okay, Lauren might. You don't have to let
Wasn't
everybody.
Hitler a vegetarian?
He was a vegetarian. That's the point he's making.
I know, but
Yeah.
okay. But
Oh boy.
You don't have to let everybody hang out with you just because you happen to agree on something.
Yeah, like if you were really offended by Cori's ridiculous Russian hat.
let's be serious and concrete for a minute. Okay? Let's be concrete. I would never refer to trans identified individuals as an abomination. I know that some people on our side of the quote movement have.
I
I'm
think that,
am I
but the thing is, animus like that um, comes from a lack of knowledge. When
correct?
you
And
don't understand a topic, you're more likely to be reactive to something you don't understand.
I think there's people who've come to that viewpoint because of an abundance of knowledge,
Yeah, okay. That is
of
also,
specific knowledge.
yeah.
If you go and you spend hours and hours and hours perusing albums of men that are dressed up in fetish wear, then I think you have knowledge and you've arrived at that viewpoint from knowledge. But
Well,
I,
let's be honest, what
you
we're
know,
doing, like walking forward with being firm but compassionate,
yeah.
that is the hardest way. It is always the hardest thing to do, to look at something or someone that you completely disagree with and have to still find the humanity there, because so many of us in this movement have been harmed by the trans rights movement. And
Mm.
so it is difficult not to want to be angry at some of the excesses and to still kind of embrace the fact that no matter the motivation or the pathway into transition, 100% of the people who've undergone any of these procedures are are victims. I mean, even talking about the most egregious paraphilic sex offending man, no, these are not ethical medical interventions for anyone. But it's very difficult it's a very fine line to walk between standing up for yourself and having compassion when there's been so much negative fallout. People lose their jobs, people lose their families, their kids, their
Mm.
lives. I mean, it's difficult. So yeah,
I always hold that compassion though. Every one of those individuals is somebody's kid,
yeah.
sibling,
So
or they didn't deserve that pathway should never have been offered. And so I don't know.
I don't
It
think
should
I
not.
have the same amount of compassion, but maybe one step down from what you have.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go on to our second segment with Karla because
Yeah,
that was
yeah, yeah. Let's
also
get out of
very
here.
interesting.
Let's get out of here. We didn't see any cats, Cori.
I know they're napping together. They're very cute, but I can't show you.
Okay, well, can you try to promise cats next week?
Oh, I can definitely promise. I just don't know if I can follow through.
Deliver. Anyway, I've missed you so much. It's nice to see you. I'm glad that we see
Good to
you.
see you too. When there's less snow, we will see each other again.
Perfect. Okay, Lauren, turn off the recording. We'll go on to the second segment. Thank you so much for joining us in our second segment of Informed Dissent for this week, which is there a 31st day of January or is it
Yes, it's
February?
tomorrow.
Oh, okay. I was like, it's February tomorrow. Okay. There's the 31st day of January. We have a guest today that I am really excited to speak with. Um, Karla, I want to give you just a chance to introduce yourself if you want to briefly, who you are, kind of where you're at, and then we'll go into one of your first pieces.
Okay, well, thank you so much for having me here. I'm not really accustomed to being on camera or public speaking, but here we are. Apparently, we're doing this.
Hmm.
I am an OB-GYN. I live in Northeast Iowa. I practice in Northeast Iowa. I have been married to my wife for 12 years. I'm a mother of three children. And I am a writer. I initially started writing a blog that I started in order to empower other OB-GYNs working in difficult rural or small town situations and to keep their practices open. And then I just sort of took a tack towards being really interested in gender medicine.
Can you just break this down for listeners? OB-GYN. So you are
Oh,
obstetrician gynecologist.
yes, that's correct. So you go to all doctors go to med school for 4 years, and then you specialize in something. And I chose to specialize in the field of obstetrics and gynecology, which is the specialty that takes care of women. We take care of women during pregnancy, we deliver babies, we provide postpartum care, and that is about half of our job. And then the other half of our job is providing gynecologic care. So we take care of any female health problems involving uterus, ovaries, vagina, cervix. And then we also do a fair amount of well woman care. So it's a really broad field. A lot of people have very different jobs within it. And I've always been what's called a full scope OB-GYN. I live in an underserved area that's kind of rural. So just everything from hysterectomies to delivering babies to doing annuals, I just kind of did it all.
Perfect. So you started this Substack blog well before May of 2025.
I've been thinking about it a while. I think I started it probably September 2024 because that's when I left my job and I had a year-long non-compete. So I was commuting to another city 2 hours away and working on a part-time basis. And I had free time and I just had all these thoughts in my head and I just wanted to start writing. So I think that's when I started my Substack or my own personal website that I transitioned to Substack.
So May 27th, 2025, you publish a piece. The title is It's Time for Liberal Physicians to Rethink American Gender Medicine.
Can I just interject? So you did not start this Substack
Oh my God.
really more interested in just OBGYN issues in general, correct? Like you did not start this to put yourself in the middle of the hellfire that you found yourself, I imagine.
No, no, I started the Substack because I personally experienced two OB-GYN practices fail um, because of the current practice environment difficulties. And I really wanted to kind of get OB-GYNs together and like rally and work to improve our practice conditions so that we could keep our practices open in places like Iowa. Like that was the original point of my personal website, which I transitioned to Substack.
Okay.
So this May piece, though, dips into a topic that we are well versed in. But was this kind of your first foray? Was this your first jump?
Well, it's the first time I wrote about it. I'd been sort of thinking about it and reading about it for a while, but I hadn't written about it previously.
So let's talk about the piece a little bit. So you write about your experiences and basically your history as a general OBGYN seeing patients who were trans-identified. Primarily, I'm assuming you're primarily seeing women who are identifying as male or non-binary.
Yes, exclusively.
Okay. So you talk a little bit about having um, performed a couple hysterectomies, and then the section here is you start having some doubts.
hmm
Can you talk about those doubts? You lay it out really well in the piece, but what were some of the things you were seeing in practice?
Well, I'm going to be very honest with you, and I hope that people won't attack me for like the language that I use, but I'm really just trying to describe my experiences and what I've seen. So, I think Iowa might be a little bit behind the rest of the nation in trends because I didn't start practicing in a place where there was this LGBT clinic until 2019. And I was the first gynecologist. The idea at first was that I would go to this clinic so that transgender males could have a comfortable place to get their like pap smears and colposcopies and IUDs, and they wouldn't have to come to gynecology clinic, which was uncomfortable. And then I got referrals for hysterectomies. And I did a lot of hysterectomies at that time. A lot of women need hysterectomies. So this was a small minority of the hysterectomies that I performed, but I would have these guys referred to me for gender affirming hysterectomies. And in 2019, when I first started, um, like they were old school transgender males, if that makes sense. Like these were guys who were like in their 30s, they've been out forever. They're typically in a relationship with like a feminine presenting woman who maybe like had some babies and just completely presented as male, and it all kind of made sense. And you're like, yeah, hysterectomy, yeah, that makes sense for how you're living your life. And I really didn't know that much about the whole field of gender medicine at that time. Um, so, for a couple of years, I was like, okay, this seems normal. Like I'd get the odd trans male requesting hysterectomy in my clinic, and I was like, okay, yeah, this makes sense. And then I think what started making me feel uneasy was that the patients really started becoming more mentally ill.
Hmm.
Um, the first patients that I had just seemed like they very much had their life together. They had a job, they had a relationship, they didn't really have a lot of mental illness. They just wanted a hysterectomy and to live as a man. But yeah, the patients really started having more like serious mental illness. And then just like,
I'm gonna
I had
read.
a patient,
I'm gonna
yeah, a
read the
patient who identified as non-binary. I was like, what's this? Did not really seem to have a particularly masculine gender identity. And I
you
was just
wrote.
like, what is
Yeah,
happening
Karla,
here? This is weird.
you wrote. I also started seeing a fair percentage of them who were really quite feminine, not
Yeah.
much different in their gender presentation than my cis patients. And you also mention in this um, poorly controlled mental health comorbidities. Were they coming, these individuals were coming to you with a letter of support? Had they gone through the other steps? Because then the other patient, finally you said you had a patient that truly stymied me, a 21-year-old natal female who identified with a non-binary gender identity and requested a hysterectomy to conform to that non-binary gender identity. Um, do you remember that when that patient came and it was just like, was it like a hard stop? Like, what are we doing? Or what am I being asked to do?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, I was just like, the logic is just breaking down for me here. Like, so you have a bespoke gender identity that involves like some organs being removed to conform to a gender that doesn't exist in nature, and I just don't understand what we're doing.
Were did you talk to colleagues when you had that
Yeah,
patient? And
yeah, yeah, I did.
what response did you get?
I had a colleague actually who's kind of an old school lesbian like me, and I called her about this patient. And she was like, "Nah, I wouldn't do that hysterectomy."
Oh, so she just was like, I'd pass.
Yeah, she's like, "I'd pass." And I was like, "I think I'm gonna pass." She's like, "Yeah, I wouldn't. I would too."
But was there
Yeah, what
any
if
like
I
back
hadn't
and
had her?
forth?
What if I hadn't had her? I could have gone down a totally different road.
Right. But was there any back and forth other than like I wouldn't do that? Like was there any like digging in between the two of you? Like what actually are we doing here?
No,
Because
I was just like, "Does this seem kind of weird and crazy to you?" And she was like, "Yeah, that sounds weird, man. I wouldn't do it." And I was like, "Okay, cool. Glad I'm not crazy."
yeah.
So then at that point you call a friend, but then you write about how you went to a private forum for OBGYNs to ask about how others address non-binary individuals who requested gender affirming hysterectomies. and you
Yeah,
that you were told your question was transphobic.
correct.
Uh,
Did that send alarm bells off for you?
It just made me very confused. Like,
Hmm.
what is happening here? I was like, I know I'm not like transphobic, whatever that is. Um, I've been out and around trans people and supporting trans people since like 2001, you know? Um, so why do the best and the brightest of my field, why are the best and the brightest of my field saying this thing that is obviously not correct? It just made me confused, basically, like unsettled. But I didn't have a lot of mental clarity about it at that time. I just
Right. So
felt
you're like,
unsettled.
am I missing something? Am I missing something that everybody else knows? Is that why
Yeah.
this question is so inappropriate? Like, yeah.
Yeah, kind of like that. But I had enough confidence in myself to be like, no, like, like I'm not that dumb.
Yeah.
so you somehow found your way to Hannah Barnes' book, Time to Think. Do you remember how
Yes.
you found your way there?
Yeah, I think I like Googled detransitioner or something.
Okay,
Um,
wait, let's
like
let's let's
I
go
don't even
slow there.
know.
How did you find that word? Did
I
you
wish I
okay, but
remembered.
you knew the like you
I
understood.
knew about the concept. I knew there was a controversy about it. I knew it was
Okay.
supposed to be super rare. I personally had a patient who like had detransitioned, so which I wrote about. I was like, that's weird. It's only supposed to happen to 1% of people, and I haven't done that many gender affirming hysterectomies.
But you had a patient who had gone down that pathway
Yeah. Yes.
and
Yeah.
they came back to you and they told you I'm detransitioning.
No, I think they came back to me for just a regular GYN concern, and I just like saw in the chart, oh, patient. I was like, oh, you have different pronouns now, and I was like, oh, okay, and I like looked at the primary care note, and it was like, oh, patient has stopped taking testosterone and is detransitioning.
Okay. So you found your way to Hannah Barnes' book and you read Time to Think.
Correct. Yeah, yeah. I listened to it on audiobook.
Okay. And what did that so what I think I want to take apart here is in some ways you are kind of showing us how this pathway worked for somebody to go from a level of trust, I'm participating, I'm doing this, into I'm questioning, I'm questioning, I'm questioning. So you read Hannah Barnes, or you listened to Hannah Barnes' book,
Yeah.
and then you wrote this, I love this phrase, I kept reading. So it sounds like you just fell into this rabbit hole of just consuming everything you could find on the
Yeah.
topic.
Yeah. I mean, I was fascinated.
Okay. You found Jesse Single's work.
Yes.
Okay. You found some of the scandals, which we'll get to shortly. There's a much bigger piece you wrote about the scandals. Um, what were you like? You're a practicing medical doctor. As this is starting to kind of unravel, or you're kind of pulling on that, the thread that's loose, were you shocked? Were you surprised? Were you trying to talk to other coworkers, your spouse? Like, how is this all happening?
Yeah. At first I really didn't talk to anybody about it because I felt like it was going to make me sound crazy. Like I was like, I sound like somebody who's discovered QAnon or something. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I didn't want people to think I was crazy. And but in terms of my emotions, I felt really depressed because it was this system that I've really trusted in my whole career. And I was like, I don't know what to trust in anymore. This sucks.
Yeah, I think you wrote like you just went by the assumption that somebody else had done the scientific, like rigorous work and research to prove that this is there's long-lasting
Safe
benefits,
and
and then
effective. Safe and
safe and
effective.
effective, and then you go down this rabbit hole and you're like, wait, so we're just going with this and nobody's, yeah. I get it. I think a lot of people get in the same boat. We get into this. Like for instance, when I started really researching this, I was hoping I was wrong. I was hoping that like I'm just not getting something. This cannot be the horror show that I believe it is. And I was not well mentally, like because I was in such conflict with what everything I was had been told and taught to believe and then I'm like just putting the logic together myself and I'm like this is profoundly homophobic and deeply unethical. And it just gets worse the more you read.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah.
I wanted there to be an explanation that made sense to me, but I just
Yeah.
couldn't stink and find one.
Yeah.
You talk a little bit how it's okay to be wrong, that medicine gets stuff wrong sometimes, that we go too quickly in one direction, new treatments seem promising, we realize that they don't pan out. Um, did you do you discover this, this feeling and what's going on with like pediatric gender transitions? You feel like it had gone wrong. Did you try to bring that to others in your field, thinking that they would just have a similar aha moment?
Well, I did, but I did not expect them to have an aha moment.
So
Okay.
you already knew you knew that they weren't going to change course. You weren't going to explain this to anyone and have them change their mind. You didn't
Well, I
expect
mean,
that.
I think I have. But yeah, I knew that wasn't going to be the universal or even the most common reaction, probably.
Yeah.
So you write this piece in May, and
Yes.
and a couple things like you're not on Twitter all the time. You're not a huge social media.
No, I'm a very private person.
Okay.
And I
You
have a family. I don't want, I do write under my real first and last name because I have credentials and I think that lends weight to my work. But at the same time, I don't particularly want to call attention to myself and my family.
so let me ask you this. This piece was published and somehow quite quickly this started, it kind of traveled like a little bit like a little wildfire through, what people will sometimes refer to as the gender critical space or the sex realist space or the TERFs. Like it kind of went like wildfire. Were you expecting that at all? Did you know this kind of group or like thing even existed?
Well, I think I knew that there was a community. I was aware of that. What I really wanted it was to like go to physicians. You know, I really feel like that is my desired audience. I haven't really been able to reach that audience very well. As to whether it was gonna like spread amongst the general public, I think either way is fine.
There were some comments to this piece that were a little harsh. Do you
Yeah.
remember some of those comments?
I mean, yeah, obviously, people are very rude sometimes.
But I feel like some of the comments were people had an ex had an expectation of this piece that you had found something out and they wanted you to be way over here.
Yeah, it
Do
seemed like
Maybe I'm just like thinking about like the homophobic, like, you dumb bitch comments. Like I was like, these are like stupid. I don't
but
know.
you didn't really get a lot of those.
Oh, well, I mean, I deleted them all. And then when it
oh,
was
good for
like
you.
reposted on Unheard, I told them they couldn't have the comments on.
Okay. But Lauren, what were you gonna say?
Um, there were people who in the, and I do hate to call it the gender critical space, but that's what we use so that people understand what we're talking about. There were people in that space who commented and kind of expected you to have all of this knowledge and use their language right away. And instead of giving you the grace to, it was already a big step, in my opinion, it was already a big step for you to have written this article without really having a lot of support around you and just kind of taking a chance, knowing that there was going to be some backlash. And then you get kind of pushed around a little bit by people who are in the gender critical space saying, you're not using the right words, or what do you mean you perform these hysterectomies and didn't think,
Correct.
like, just, people being
Oh
super,
yeah, I do remember somebody was like arguing with me about like what the blood supply to the ovary is. And I
Yes.
was like, okay, like
yeah,
literally I like ligate the blood supply to the ovary for a living. Like
yeah,
I know what the blood supply to the ovary is,
Yes.
yeah.
people.
But
So
I
you
remember when this blew up and it was like people, it's funny when you get into this, there is so much information. I mean, it is a dark, dark well to fall down, and there's so much information to learn. We joke sometimes that it's like an unofficial PhD program, and people, when they make their first little steps out into, speaking out and saying, "Hey, I have some questions," they're not often given the grace or the time to kind of work through this really, it's a lot of information. And I saw that happen with your article where people expected you to be this gender critical, quote unquote, expert right away. And you're coming from, like so many people, you're coming from a place where you have been told for years, decades at this point, that this is beautiful, natural, healthy, and all the science is behind it. And you're having to question that by yourself, kind of in isolation. And you got pretty far by yourself, to be quite
yeah.
honest. You really
I
did.
yeah,
You
yeah.
really pulled it apart quite intelligently by yourself. Like a lot of people don't get there until after they've been in this stew for a while and have had a lot of people giving them information. I think you had the benefit of being a medical practitioner, so understanding the biology and then having come to this conclusion like there's not really a lot of evidence here. So if there's no evidence that this helps people, what are we doing?
So so then I think I want to pivot to the piece that you wrote at the end of December. So this piece is physicians must demand answers from WPATH. It's high time for medical organizations to confront WPATH about manipulating its own research. So before we jump into this one, I want to pick your brain for a minute about how guidelines come into existence in a field like yours. So, real basics. You are an OBGYN, OB-GYN. How do you get your, how do guidelines come to you? You're practicing in Iowa. How do new guidelines, how do practices, how do the things come to you that you know?
Right. Oh my gosh. I'm so glad that we're talking about this. Because I can totally really nerd out about this. Because I went to a very academic residency program, the University of Iowa. It's like highly ranked, very like research, academic. So in OBGYN, like the guidelines are like our religion. Like the stakes are so high in what we do, and the consequences of not doing the right thing are so
And
dire.
some of the highest medical malpractice insurance is paid by
Yeah,
OBGYN.
that is correct. Like every OB-GYN will get sued several times in their lifetime. It's not a good system, It's often the neurosurgeons who pay the highest malpractice premiums, but I can tell you, we do not make what the neurosurgeons make. Um, but anyway, but yeah, so guidelines so important, and you've got a committee. Like the American College of OB-GYNs is where these guidelines come from, the ACOG. And they have committee, like task forces and committees on all these different aspects, like hypertension in pregnancy. And I've seen those guidelines change during my career. Um, and you've got like the luminaries of the field are on the committee. And, they meet quarterly to examine new evidence in hypertension and pregnancy and any like huge new studies. Like, do we need to make some updates for our guidelines? And they're the most famous people who like, Baha Sabai at UT Southwestern and, all these super like famous professors with their own labs and grants and. So the committee, but like I trust the committee. And this is passed down to the faculty at the University of Iowa who, teach it to the residents. And, if you don't, and every morning at board sign out, we'd have to justify what we did overnight by the guidelines. And they would ask us, like, why did you do this? And you're like, well, because of the practice bulletin on hypertension and pregnancy is why I did that. And if you didn't follow the guidelines, your professors would be like, are you trying to kill this lady? Do you want to get this hospital sued? What are you doing? I mean, I cannot overemphasize how important the guidelines are. And once
And
you're out of
ACOG
yeah,
and
yeah.
ACOG guidelines will cover, like, as a practicing physician, you
Yeah.
should never really have some kind of case come to you where you're like, I have no guidelines. Like that it
Oh
should
no,
be
no, there aren't guidelines for everything.
okay. So you're
There are
given,
not guidelines for every single thing that we see I mean, we see an infinite number of weird medical scenarios in our practice. You can't, there's not always a guideline.
but when you're practicing, is there or has there been a guideline about trans identified patients?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
For
Yeah.
a long time, you've had guidelines telling you,
I think since the late 2010s.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
I mean, yeah, because I've looked at the guidelines of ACOG, and their guidelines are hysterectomy for the purposes of gender affirmation should be considered medically necessary. Like that
That's
is
it.
a current guideline.
But
Okay.
that's all it says is that it's
Yeah,
medically
yeah.
necessary.
There are not a ton of current guidelines, and then there's a lot of stuff about like having a respectful practice setting, giving people the chance to use their pronouns, and then there's a lot of guidelines that's just like common sense, like transgendered males still need pap smears if they have a cervix. Testosterone is not birth control. You can get pregnant on testosterone.
You
If you don't want
you
to
would
be, use some other form of birth control, like so a lot of it is just like normal stuff.
okay.
Is there any way you could like dig into like is there any kind of contradiction in the guidelines themselves? Like for instance saying like I don't know, the do no harm principle, but like aren't there guidelines for OBGYN in terms of like don't women have to be a certain age to get hysterectomies? Is if there's no medical condition. Like you can't just go in if you're 20 years old and
Oh,
say, I want
yeah,
to,
no, at no age can you just have a hysterectomy for no reason. But
unless you say that you're trans. That seems like not a
yeah.
medical
Well,
reason.
I will just a tiny little historical sidebar here. Early individuals put on testosterone were actually medically advised you should have a hysterectomy by a certain period of time being on testosterone because there is an the outcome of the length of time you're on testosterone does have an effect on the atrophy of the uterus and the system, and they were almost always advised you should have a hysterectomy. I don't remember clearly if it was 5, 7 years post starting testosterone, but that was previously built in. But what I want to see if are ACOG's guidelines based on WPATH?
I do not know what the source material
Okay.
is off the top of my head.
Okay.
It really just says gender affirming hysterectomies should be considered medically necessary.
Yeah, I think
So,
so.
so who, if you're not determining whether they're medically necessary, that means it's being outsourced to someone else. And I'm assuming this is like therapists, so they have to bring in a therapist letter to say this is medically necessary. So you have someone not in the medical field telling clinicians what's medically necessary. Is that basically how
I
it
mean,
works?
do we even need a letter anymore? I don't know. Like, I think at some point, didn't they take away the letter because that was gatekeeping or something?
You don't need a letter for
I don't
own,
know. When I did my last one, like to be approved for insurance, you needed a letter.
you need a
But
letter.
I
The
don't know if
letter,
that's like the
correct.
universally applied standard of care on this day. I don't know.
Yeah. So you then did this huge deep dive into WPATH. And
I
what
know, based on my extreme love of gossip.
what did you find out when you did that?
Yeah, so I found out, what did I find out? Well, really, the argument that I'm making is that these people blatantly lied and committed brazen academic fraud. This is not just a difference of opinion. You can look at the evidence one way, you can look at the evidence another way. You know, it is, it's not like, should we induce gestational hypertension at 38 weeks or 37 weeks? You know what I mean? Well, let's, look at all of it and reasonable people can disagree. It's just, no, they actually straight up lied about their research findings and methods.
Have you seen anything else similar to that in your experience that is so blatant or so egregious?
Um, I mean, yeah, when I think about scandals in medicine, there's the opioid prescribing thing. I'm sure they, concealed their data.
But
Um,
that's how you would describe this as a medical scandal.
yeah, let me think. I think there's some allegations that manufacturers of
Of the
various
mesh.
pelvic mesh,
Yeah. Okay.
did
That's the
not
only other, yeah.
report their side effects.
So what was the blatant lie academic fraud?
Sure. I mean, they said this guideline is based on systematic reviews. And clearly the systematic reviews had been done and discarded, and the guideline was not in fact based on them.
Yeah, so we're talking
And
about
in their methods
in
section,
yeah,
they would say these guidelines were you're written by system, with the, the conclusions we reached were based on the systematic reviews that were done that followed Institute of Medicine guidelines on how research should be done, with the conflict of interest taken into account. And obviously, the systematic reviews were in no way used to make the recommendations in the document, and the Institute of Medicine guidelines were not followed. This is
okay.
very clear,
Okay, let's dive into this a little bit
very
because
clear.
I like your writing on this section. So, talking about a conflict of interest. So, a conflict of interest disclosure in medicine or guideline development or when you're writing a paper. The academic document states, you have to disclose or share if you have any conflicts of interest, and it's taken very seriously in academia, right? Like this is how it kind of works.
Yes, yes.
So in 2018, they emailed the WPATH team and asked them to disclose any conflicts of interest.
Yeah, like if you have a conflict of interest, you can't be on the committee. And then they say, okay, in very rare cases, if literally nobody else is an expert in this field except for this person who has a conflict of interest because they have a patent on the device to treat this condition or whatever, they can be on the committee. But
Okay.
under no circumstances can they be more than 50% of the members of the committee.
Okay. So I love
Never.
this. You wrote a meltdown ensued among the WPATH members.
Yes. They were just like, who's making me declare this conflict of interest? Where did this conflict of interest come in?
Yeah,
Who
they
wrote
even
this
said,
form? Why am I being asked to share my conflicts of interest? Like they never even heard of it before.
which which is completely kind of asinine that anybody working in guideline development would be surprised or have never seen a form for conflict of interest.
Right.
Okay.
I know.
I thought this
I mean, these people are just amateurs. I'm sorry.
Jameson Green from WPATH, a transgender man with a PhD in equalities law, chimed in. I agree, the form was difficult for me as well. And as I worked on it, I actually thought the only reason I was able to summarize my potential conflicts was that I'm not a clinician. Green, basically, most of these individuals who was asked to fill out a conflict of interest, when they went to try to fill it out, they basically said, "My entire career is a conflict of interest." On like
Yeah, I think that is
everything,
accurate.
yeah, everything that they've done in the past, all of their advocacy, everything was a conflict of interest and they should not. So does that mean they should not have been part of the guideline development team? Or you said they should not have made up more than half of the team?
Yeah, so they shouldn't have been part of it at all.
Okay.
But if there was truly nobody else who had the expertise to sit on the group, they at least should not have been more than 50%.
Okay.
And they made up the whole committee.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay. So you then you went, have you gone through like all of SOC 8, WPATH SOC 8, looked it over? Do you,
Well, searched for grade to see if any of the recommendations had a grade.
and okay, give us
None of
a
them have a grade. None of
okay,
them have a grade.
what is a grade and why should a guideline have a grade?
Yeah, so this is a system to classify how good the evidence is. Like, do we have excellent evidence that this intervention prevents this, unwanted outcome? Or is the evidence kind of medium? Or is it, not that great, but we think there's something there? Or is it like, really, we don't have any? So there's this whole complicated system that researchers use. They look at the different types of studies. Randomized clinical trials are the best, but there are many other kinds of studies that can be used. And then you get a grade of how good your evidence is. And ideally, when you're writing guidelines, you would like, the guidelines to have excellent evidence, but at least you need to put a grade next to it so that the person reading the guidelines can know, is this based on good evidence, medium evidence, not the best evidence? And when I look at any of my ACOG guidelines, all the recommendations are graded.
Yeah. And so I'm gonna
And then literally in the methods section of WPATH, they're like, all of our recommendations are graded. And then you just read the document and you're like, none of them are graded. I mean, like, you don't have to be a super smart academic researcher to look at this and
we
know
do
that
not.
it's not that good.
Okay. And
Like, I'm just a mom from Iowa, and I can even like search a PDF for the word grade and find that it's not there.
so when you dive into WPATH over this and you realize conflicts of interest abound, they're not even following systematic reviews of evidence. They're not
Like
even
like basically they're lying
Yeah.
about what what the guidelines are, how what it is.
okay.
Yeah.
It's not
So
even that it's bad science, it's that they're
There's
like
none?
misrepresenting what
Yeah.
they did.
Yeah.
okay.
Like that's way worse than like being kind of a doofus and, kind of doing a bad research study, but at least you like were honest about how you did it.
Right. Well, this shows intent, right? Like you're like you said, it's not like you're one idiot that did a bad job on a report. This is a confluence of people who decided, even though they don't have any good evidence, we're going to put this out as guidelines. Like this is
Yeah, they
intentionally
decided
done.
to say these guidelines were based on systematic reviews
Yeah,
when they knew that they weren't,
yeah. And then there was a
because they
systematic review,
themselves had buried the systematic reviews.
right? And which they don't mention. Yeah.
As a practicing clinician, knowing what you know now about WPATH guidelines, should these be used in practice anymore?
I mean, obviously not. They're complete crap, and the people who wrote them certainly cannot be trusted.
You know.
Okay, so what do we do? Because not only are they still being used, there have been states who have actually, I kid you not, enshrined into law that this is the guideline that should also uphold the insurance determinations and what the law should be giving children.
I don't know what to tell you.
Do you think that there's any possibility for the because in my mind, I'll be honest, I do not think that the medical community has the ability to self-correct on this, and that is exactly why we pursue bans. Do you see a way in which the medical community could self-correct in in a timely fashion also? Because once you realize how horrible this is, you realize this has to stop yesterday. Do you have any faith that the medical community can do a 180 on this and kind of restore people's faith?
But I don't even know who would do the 180. Are we asking
Right.
WPATH to repolice itself? Or are we asking the external?
Yeah, I think what we're doing is we're asking all the other societies to revise their own guidelines based on the
Well,
fact
yeah.
that now we know that WPATH's guidelines are fraudulent.
But all of them are like the AAP, the Endocrine Society, are in this I like to call a circle jerk, citing each other as credentials for their own guidelines.
They all go
Right.
back
So
to WPATH.
WPATH cites the endocrine cites WPATH, who cites AAP, who cites WPATH. They all go back to WPATH. But these, so I mean,
think,
this is what's
yeah, I don't
truly
know. I
worrying,
mean, I
right?
think there are enough very smart people at the helm, in high levels of these organizations that can realize just how ridiculous this all is and unscientific, but they've been isolated
Right. And I mean, you were
by
also
by
now in,
activists.
yeah, I mean, we're also now in a situation where, like, for instance, the American Academy of Pediatrics is being sued by a detransitioned person who was medicalized as a child. So they, in their own self-interest, they couldn't like they can't come out and say, "Oops," because they're being sued, saying that they, should not have been listening to these guidelines in the first place, and they weren't scientifically based. They can't turn around and say, "Oh, we made a mistake," because then they open themselves up to all of these lawsuits. So I don't see a way the medical community can turn itself around without external pressure, right? I don't know if you see a way out for them, but I don't anymore. I really had hopes that, like, once enough people realized what was happening, they would turn it around, but I'm not seeing that. So many people in these organizations high up, they do know what's happening. They do know what's going on. They do know it's based on bad evidence.
I want to go back though for a minute. Carl, is the, I guess we're looking at what are the pathways out of this. So we have the organization that supposedly had been writing the international standard of care for an entire field is based completely on fraud. Um, what is so one of the pathways you kind of said was the other heads of the other, you know, AAP, endocrine, all of those that are peripheral, that they should do the policing and say, no, you can't, this has to go. But is there any other option? Like, do you see any other pathways?
No,
Yeah.
I don't even understand the question. Sorry.
No, I mean, like, I just right now just I have personally said a few times nobody should be looking at WPATH as if it is a clinical standard or guideline that should be in utilization at all anymore, period. Yet it is. I, I just don't, I just, yeah. But
Yeah, I mean,
in your assessment, this is, I mean, you've called it, I feel like you've called it crap and garbage and, but I mean, this is beyond reproach. This is not how medicine is supposed to work with guidelines, period.
no. And that's why I'm hoping that the organizations will just realize that their guidelines on this issue are just, you know, created in such a different process than other guidelines that are normal.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I understand your skepticism.
This is just, it's so heavy sometimes because when you go then to try to talk to normal people or even people who are still, even adults who are still on a pathway to medicalize based on WPATH guidelines, it's very challenging. It's very hard. Um, where do you go next? So are you gonna keep writing on this? Are you gonna keep digging? Where do you feel like you're going next on this?
Um, well, I feel like working with my own specialty society just to help as many people as I can understand the misrepresentation around these issues is probably the best role I can play.
Okay. Are you gonna keep writing? Are you gonna keep blogging?
I don't know.
Okay. Okay. Um, has this changed your practice at all? Has what you've learned, has it changed your trust in medicine?
Yeah, it has made me less trustful of medical guidelines in general, unfortunately.
How does that, I mean, you have a long career still ahead of you.
Yeah,
Yeah, well,
how do you
yeah.
operate in the system that that you really have lost some faith in? Do you just then go with like do you go back to like your own first principles in the way you treat patients and look at with a more critical eye at the guidelines that are coming down to you?
Yeah, that's it. I think that's exactly right. I mean, it's not that I don't use guidelines. It's
Right.
just that I just gut check them at this
Hmm.
point.
Okay. Um, where can people find you if they want to read these excellent pieces? Where do these exist?
The OB-GYN Power Project on Substack.
Okay.
I mean, they can also read about, you know, issues affecting rural OB-GYNs. It's really fascinating.
But I mean, in some ways, in some ways, I want to recognize that you stumbled into something that I don't know that you had no expectation. You wanted to serve people in your community,
Yeah.
and you
And
stumbled
also, well, I do think that, you know, I'm not in like the blue bubble echo chamber of the university, so that's helpful.
because of where because you're rural and because you are more not you don't have as much pressure of your
Yeah, like nobody's gonna cancel me, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like if I was on faculty at the university, people would get mad and cancel me. Like around here, people are just like so grateful that a board certified gynecologist is like helping them out.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I want to thank you for taking time to talk to us today. And I also want to thank you for stepping into something that you, I mean,
You didn't have to.
no, you didn't have to.
You
Um,
definitely didn't have to write this piece after you asked questions and were told you were a transphobe. I'm sure that was enough warning that this was not going to be received with open arms. So it takes a lot of courage to speak out.
Well,
So
you
thank
guys are
you.
very kind. Thank you so much for having me on. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And we will share links in the show notes where people can find your writing and subscribe. And I hope you keep writing.
Oh,
So
thank you. That's
that
very kind. Yeah, and thank you for doing this show. I love listening to it. It's so great. It's super awesome.
thank you.
Thank you. We try.
Hi, thank you so much for joining us today on Informed Dissent. As soon as the interview ended with Karla, Lauren said something that has stuck with me for most of the day. She pointed out how striking she found it that both Karla and I, two lesbians, both in the medical profession, did not register or really start to question this model until it reached this certain point. And that certain point was when it tipped or when it spilled over out beyond the gender nonconforming proto-gay kids and began manifesting visibly in this category of non-binary, often very femme presenting girls and young women. And she's right. She picked up on something that I hadn't even really thought about as we were recording. And what Lauren is naming is uncomfortable for me. Karla and I both had this, wait, this has all gone terribly wrong moment, not at the beginning, but later, in the middle of it, in the midst of it. By the time we had that, wait, this has all gone wrong, clearly this model had become so illogical, so detached from sex and from medicine and any coherent clinical anything. But something about us had been conditioned to accept it as appropriate or maybe even protective for homosexuals, especially the gender nonconforming lesbians. We had absorbed somewhere, somehow, this idea that masculine girls were a clinical category, that the butch girl was a problem that maybe should be managed or could be managed rather than a variation. And that's a hard thing to sit with as someone who distinctly remembers growing up questioning and having feelings as I came to understand my own sexuality. This is not easy stuff for people to admit. And I think as we talk with or have more Karlas in the world, I think we need to think about how are we brought in and understood and seen for what we can add to the conversation. I don't want us to paint Karla as a villain. I don't feel like that's the position that we're in, but I do feel some weight today that this imposes some level of obligation on us. We need to be willing to grapple with our own participation, but also more so our own histories and how we came to be in this position. And I don't think it's just us. When I think about all of the gender clinicians that, a lot of us consider household names,
dresser, turban. These are other homosexuals. And there's something here. There's something to that. So maybe this is just another part of the journey or the reckoning. And this is part of what Informed Dissent, I think, sometimes can do well. So if you can, like, subscribe, share the podcast. We'll be back next week. And as always, stay informed and ready to dissent.